All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is the EdTechTeam Teaching and Learning webinar, and our topic today is on improving student writing. I'm so glad that you could join us. If you want, you can introduce yourself in the chat. We'll be linking some links there as we go through today's webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen and introduce our attendees today. Find my mouse. There it is. All right. So, like I said, today we are talking about improving student writing. All of the resources can be found at edtech.team/student-writing. So you can hop on over to that slide deck and see all of the resources that our presenters are sharing today. So again, that resource link is edtech.team/student-writing. All right, so let's do some introductions. First, my name is Amanda Taylor. I am a Director of Professional Development with EdTechTeam. I am based out of Orange County, California. And I have with me three amazing guests today. I've got Eric Kurtz, who is a technology integrationist out of Ohio. He's also the blogger at Control-Alt-Achieve. Elizabeth Armstrong is an English teacher and a soon-to-be educational and technology coach for Saddleback Valley Unified in Mission Viejo, California. And Kimberly Eckhart, who's an English teacher and instructional coach from Louisiana, and she's also the Louisiana Teacher of the Year. So we're super excited to have all three of our panelists on today. Okay, hey guys, thanks for popping in the chat and introducing yourself. All right, so one more time, we've got our resources at edtech.team/student-writing. And make sure that you get on this resource so you can complete the form. At the end of the webinar, we will have a drawing for you to win a free online course, so you want to make sure that you get in on that. So again, one more time, edtech.team/student-writing is where all of the resources are, and that's also where the link is to complete the form for your chance to win an online course. All right, so I'm gonna do a little screen share switch here with Eric Curtis, and he's gonna kick us off and get us started. So let me stop sharing my screen and switch over to Eric.
All right, are we good to go? Excellent. All right, so howdy everybody. My name's Eric, and I'm now going to share my screen, and let's go ahead and pull up this. Awesome, very good. So we're going to be talking about technology tools to help improve student writing. And so for my portion of this, what I'm going to be taking a look at here is self-editing tools that students can use to check their own writing. Now, even though I am focusing on self-editing tools, these certainly could be used for peer review as well, because sometimes that comes up where we'll say, hey, you know, we want, obviously, you know, students to share their writing with another peer and then have them leave feedback. And maybe they know what buttons to push. They know how to share that properly, and the other student knows how to go in and leave a comment. But sometimes they might not know what to leave a comment about. And so these tools can be great for self-editing, but they could also be used for a student if they're learning how to do peer feedback and they're looking for some tools to help them identify what might be some areas in the writing that need some improvement. So first one up we're going to talk about is one of my favorite Chrome extensions, and that's Read and Write for Google Chrome. Now, Read and Write is what we call a Chrome web extension. If you're not familiar with Chrome web extensions, just as a real quick intro, they are little programs that you can install. And when you install them, they put these little icons way up here in the top right-hand corner of your Chrome browser. Those are extensions. And then when you click on them, you can, you know, do something with them, whether it's take a screenshot or define a word or whatever the case might be. Well, Read and Write is one of those extensions. And it does a lot of cool stuff, but we're going to focus on one particular feature of it today, which is the ability to do text-to-speech and how that could be beneficial for a student if they're working on self editing. So first of all, I have Read and Write installed, but if you do not, you'll be able to check for the link that's being pushed out there. But you could also just go out to the Chrome Web Store and search for Read and Write. And I already have it installed, so for me, I don't have the install button. But if you were to go out to the Chrome Web Store and look for Read and Write for Google Chrome, you would have a big blue button that says add to Chrome, and you could click on that, and that would install it. Now, once it gets installed, once you have that extension installed, then when you go to a Google document, and I have a pretend student document here, what you end up noticing is that you're going to have this purple puzzle piece button up here. Now you've got the extension up there, there's Read and Write, but it gives you this little purple puzzle piece that if I click on, it gives me an extra toolbar that you don't normally have inside of Google Docs with all these amazing, wonderful extra features here. Now there is a free version of Read and Write, and there is a paid version. I'm using the one that has all the buttons on it, but what we're talking about today is completely part of the free version. So the text-to-speech portion of it is totally free, so students don't have to worry about that. Now you as an educator, educators can get the full version at no cost on the Read and Write website. They do have a form you can fill out to say you're an educator, and you can get all the buttons. But what we're going to talk about today is how students could use this tool to do some self-editing by having their own work read back to them. So let's say a student has written up this George Washington report, and yes, there are some errors in here, but they're intentional. So I did throw a few in there, so hopefully some of these tools would catch them. And my idea is that when a student is done writing, what they can do is they can fire up the Read and Write extension here, the toolbar, and they can use this play button. And what that's going to do is it's going to read aloud their document back to them. And I'm going to demonstrate that here in a second. And what's nice about that is that really does help, because even if we say to a student, please read your own work, well, our brain puts in the right information, even if the wrong information is there. So we can put, the twice in a row, but maybe not read it when we look at it because our brain is correcting for that. So it's really nice to be able to hear your own writing read back aloud. Now, the way it works is I can either highlight some and hit play, or I can just hit play and let it read the whole document. I can also choose voices. So up here in the top right, there's a little drop down and there's options, and there's lots of different nationalities and genders, so you can choose what voice you would prefer to hear that. And you can also adjust the speed. I've got it on US Samantha at the moment as an example. So let's try this out. I'm going to go ahead, and by the way, there are errors in here, like I said, so when it reads it, you'll actually hear some of those errors. So let me go ahead and I'll have this play and see if we can hear this. All right, so here we go.
George Washington was the first president of the United States. He was also the commander-in-chief of all American forces during the American Revolutionary War.
All right, and I will go ahead and stop it there. But you noticed, it pronounced commander wrong as commander because it was spelled wrong. And again, it highlights each word as it goes and so forth. So this is a great tool. Now, again, there's lots of other awesome things about Read and Write, and that could be its own whole, training session. But just that feature alone is absolutely worth it to allow students to hear their own writing read back aloud to them, catch some mistakes, and then work on fixing those. So that was the first thing I wanted to mention to you guys. After that, the next couple are all pretty similar. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple of them and then just, point out some of the other ones to you as to what they do. And this next batch of tools for self-editing are tools that do more of like a grammar check. So it's something that's going to scan through your document and try to indicate for you what might be some areas that you need to fix. The first one is called Language Tool. And each one of these are not extensions, whereas Read and Write was an extension that I installed and it put the little icon up there. These are actually what we call add-ons. Now, add-ons are just a little bit different. And the way add-ons work is instead of going to the Chrome Web Store, what you're going to do is from your document, you're going to go up to add-ons. And from the add-ons menu, you'll go down to Get Add-ons, and that will bring up basically the add-ons store, so to speak. So it's kind of like the Chrome Web Store, but it's the add-ons store. And again, these are all free, so no cost or anything like that to that. Now you can just browse through these to try to find it, but there's a bunch of like 300 plus add-ons. So I'm just going to type in Language Tool, all one word, and there it is. There's Language Tool. Now, if I want to, and I thought I didn't realize I already had this one installed. But again, if I didn't have it installed, what I would do is I would click on the plus free button here, as you would see, and that would then ask permission, and it would install it. But it looks like I already had this one installed ahead of time, and yes, I did. Excellent. That's fine. It's already in there. But that's how you go to get add-ons from the add-ons menu and get add-ons. So what does Language Tool do? Well, basically what it's going to do is it's going to scan through my document and try to show me where I might have some errors and give me some suggestions for correction. So let's take it for a spin. Let's try it out. So if I go to add-ons and I go down to Language Tool and I click on check, I'll get this sidebar that pops up over here. And I'll click on, well, it may already be running it. If not, it took care of it right away. And so down the side here, you can now see these possible mistakes. Now, what I like about this, what's kind of cool, is it doesn't just find the normal things like we'd expect, like spelling errors, but it notices other things. Like here, it's saying, it's noticing that it says the pronoun he is usually used with a third person or past tense verb, like helps or helped. It's picking up this sentence here where I wrote, he helped start the big French and Indian War. And it noticed that was the wrong tense of help. Well, it's saying with the pronoun he, we really should have third person or past tense. So it's not just finding an error, it's trying to explain what's going on there and saying you might want help or helps or helped. And I could say, yeah, it's he helped start. So I could click on helped and get that fixed. And all through there, it's doing that sort of thing. It's not just finding the errors, but it's trying to explain why that is wrong. So again, this is great for self-editing, but like we said, also for peer editing. If students aren't exactly sure what to look for in a peer's work, this could help. So that's an example of an add-on. A similar one to this is one called SAS Writing Revisor. Now, this one's different enough that I think it's worth showing it to you. This is from Curriculum Pathways, I believe. And this one basically has you run 25 different tests, whichever ones you choose, on your document. Now, I've already got it installed. So if I come back to add-ons and SAS Writing Revisor and I open that up, what you're going to see is I do get a panel over here on the side that has 5 different categories, and in each category are different tests that I can run on my document. So for example, let's say I go to sentence economy and passive voice, and I'm curious, are there any passive voice issues in the document? So I can click on that and it's going to run that test on my document. Now, what's cool, first of all, it's going to highlight all these places where it found passive voice, but what I'm like, I don't even know what passive voice is. Well, again, that's what's so neat about this is you can click the button here where it says about passive voice, and for each one of these tests, it's going to have a little instruction to explain this is what we're talking about. It's the difference between the soccer player kicked the ball versus the ball was kicked by the soccer player, and how active voice is a little bit more powerful than passive voice where the subject is being acted upon. So again, we're getting all of our different errors, or not errors, but these aren't necessarily errors, but just areas of concern that we might want to consider, and then an explanation about it. And again, there's loads and loads and loads of these as you go down through. You can run all of these different tests on there. A quick note about Writing Revisor, it does require parent permission for students under 18. Some add-ons are like that. No big deal. Basically, when the student logs in, they'll just click a button that says they're under 18. It'll ask for a parent email address, and it does email the parent and ask them to click a link to say that it's okay to use this particular add-on. So just be aware of that. If you want your kids to use it, they're probably not going to be able to use it the same day they install it. There'll need to be a little bit of a lead time there for the parents to be able to put their approval in there. Now, I've got a couple others I'm not going to actually demonstrate. I'm just going to mention them. RightCue is another neat one that's out there. It's made by the same people that make Read and Write for Google. So Text Help, that company makes this one as well. I'll just show you a quick picture of basically what it does. When you run RightCue, it again does much like the other ones. It will scan through the document and try to find potential errors for grammar, punctuation, and spelling to point those out to you. And then another fun one is called Highlight the Music. And what this one does is it highlights the sentences based upon their length using different colors for different length sentences so that you can see, am I using too many short sentences? Is everything long sentences? Do I have a nice variety of sentences in there? And so when you run this add-on, you'll get all of these color-coded there for you to be able to at least get a little bit of an idea if you need some more sentence variety there or not. Beyond that, I do have a couple others that aren't add-ons or extensions. They're just websites. And so these are not something you'd actually install. These are ones you would have to copy and paste your text into, but like Hemingway, Analyze My Writing, and Slick Write. Each one of these, if you follow those links, it'll take you out to that site where you would now come in here and we would get rid of the text that's in here and we would paste in ours. So I would literally have to come and copy, all of my text from here, come back over to Hemingway Editor, and then paste my text in and let it do a scan on that. Nothing wrong with that, just a little bit of an extra step to have to go out to those websites, but those are all helpful as well. Now that and much, much more, all of those links, if you need to get to them, you can also find on my blog at controlaltachieve.com/Google Writing, because I've got, it's mostly a collection of Google tools that support the writing process. That'll take you out to my blog, but it'll drop you into this one particular page here called Write with Google Tools. And I do cover a lot of different things there, from inspiration for writing, planning for writing, writing tools, and then there's the self-editing portion. So what we just went through there does show up as a subset on there, but then it also goes into peer and teacher feedback and revising and assessing and publishing and so forth. So you can catch those over there, as well as, of course, in the links that have been shared here in this as well. So that's it for me. I'll go ahead and turn that back over to you guys.
All right, thanks, Eric. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. Okay, so we are going to stop for some questions. While we're talking about the questions, I just want to remind you again that all of our resources can be found at edtech.team/student-writing. Also, don't forget to complete the form for your chance to win a free online course. So we had a couple of questions in the chat, Eric. If you want to, let me ask them to you and see if you can help us answer. So Jennifer Scott was asking, how does Language Tool compare to Grammarly? Grammarly doesn't currently work in Google Docs yet, but she heard that it will soon. Do you have anything to add to that, Eric, about Grammarly versus?
Yeah. So I really don't, because of that exact reason, because the Grammarly did not run inside of Google Docs. But that's great to hear. I did not know that was going to be something that worked. That I have not properly compared it. So unfortunately, no, I can't give a good comparison. I know it's a great tool, like for when you're writing an email. It does work inside of Gmail and things like that. So I'm sorry to say no, I've not done a fair comparison on that one, but glad to hear that it is supposed to be running in Docs in the future. That would be fantastic. I'll definitely follow that and take it for a spin when that happens.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that use Grammarly for their emails. So the other question I had, and Linworth Wilmot asked this question, and I don't know the answer. Maybe you do. Does the extension or the add-ons work in the offline mode?
Most of those, I'm going to say probably not, but yes, there is the capability. It is going to be completely a case-by-case basis on those, though. The ones we looked at here today, my guess is going to be no for each of those. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm not. Let me put this, I'm not aware of any of those having offline capabilities. I believe they are.
Those do access an online database when they're doing their editing.
Yes.
That way, it's not taking up space on your computer. So
that is correct.
Yeah, that would make sense. So yeah, Linworth we'll look into that more. Maybe somebody else has the answer to that, and then we're just not aware. So Jennifer Scott says that she loves the Hemingway app. She requires all of her students to use it and Grammarly before they turn in work. Yeah, it's not always fun to have them go out of Docs, but I think Jennifer, it's also good to have them know how to use more than just one thing. So great questions, you guys. Thank you so much for adding to the chat, and thank you, Eric, for sharing.
Sure thing.
Okay, so one more time, make sure that you access our resources online at edtech.team/student-writing and complete the form for your chance to win an online course. We are going to hop to our next guest, who is Elizabeth Armstrong. She's also a personal friend of mine. She teaches here in Orange County, not far from where I am. And we're excited to hear what she has to share today. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. There we go, Elizabeth. It's all you, girl.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm actually not going to screen share anything right now. I may in a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of talk for a few minutes. And I have been teaching English literature for, I just closed out my 11th year. So yay, school's over. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I realized, because we have to, as a teacher, we know students tell us writing is very challenging for them. And it's very challenging as for teachers to teach writing because all of our students are at all these really different levels of writing. I have some really strong students in every class, and then I have some really, really low students. And so it's always been a real struggle for me to, really have authentic writing from them, and for them to really try and them to really, learn how to get to that next level. And many, many conversations over the years. And I finally had a realization that, one, I was writing all these comments that students were not reading because they simply see all of these comments and they either, frankly, some just don't care, but some just don't know what to do with them. I'm writing run-on and fragment and, all this other stuff and weak evidence and whatever, but I have to assume that when they're making those mistakes, in most cases, it's not just laziness, it's just that they don't know any better, or they don't know how to make it better. And, I would get really frustrated making all these comments, and then the students would either not read them, you see the essays in the trash, and you're just like, well, that was a lot of work down the drain for all of us, right? Including the student. So it was really kind of sad. And I actually admit that I kind of shied away from teaching writing for a little bit. I mean, I would teach little pieces here and there, but these big essays, the process papers. And then even then it was an outline, a rough draft, a final draft, somewhere in the middle you do a peer review. But then I was finding in the peer reviews, the other students didn't know how to help each other. Like, it's just, they all have these issues, and it's how do I get them to really want to learn how to fix the issues in their papers? And how do I get them to read a rubric and understand what that means? And how do I get them to understand my comments and know how to fix them? Well, the simple answer is the not so simple answer when you have 35 kids in a classroom, and I teach high school, so 52 minutes, 35 kids. And the real answer is you have to have these conversations with them. There has to be this conversation, and it can be written conversation, but it's so hard to handwrite comments that are really authentic and useful rather than just, hey, you did this wrong, right? And just noting these little abbreviations that they don't even know what they mean. So 2 years ago, I actually used Seesaw for this. I'm going to talk about turnitin.com in a little bit because this year I just fell in love with the new features that they offer. But I understand that not all school districts have turnitin.com, and it's a paid program. But last year I used Seesaw for this. And if you're not familiar with Seesaw, it's sort of a portfolio for students. They can post anything from videos to papers to pretty much anything that you can post online, you can post on Seesaw, and it's free. And what I did, and at the time they had a 5-minute, you could leave voice comments, and you had like a 5-minute max. And what I did is I took my student papers and I gave them a 5-minute basically feedback on their papers. And I talked about the things that they did well, and I wrote comments on the paper as well. And then I talked about the things that they needed to fix, but I talked about it in a way of, here's what you didn't do correctly, but here's how you can fix it. Not necessarily giving them the answer, although sometimes I do because that's modeling. And if they can incorporate that, then that's great. But that is super time consuming, especially when you have, again, 35 students in a classroom. So what I decided to do, and I implemented this last year, is I decided, and this kind of goes to my third point under authentic feedback, it's not a final draft until it is. I never, ever have a final draft in my classroom anymore. Students can write and rewrite and rewrite and revise as many times as they want to. So, and until the very last day of the semester, I literally took an essay yesterday. And this is basically the end of our semester. And I will say that the feedback I received from students, because here's what happens. I give them my feedback on the first paper, and I call that it's a rough draft, but it's their final draft. And if they are happy, because some students are really strong writers, they can do a rough draft and edit it and turn it in, and it can be a solid paper. And then not a lot, but some can. So my rule is it's a rough draft and a final draft, and they get a grade for both. If they're not happy with their final draft grade, they can go back and look at my comments, and they can revise it and turn it in for another draft. If they want more comments, if they want to sit down with me and have a conversation, if they want to, and I use voice comments and text comments and rubrics all on turnitin.com, but I'll share that in a minute. But the more comments they want and the more they want to work with me on it, then I am open to that with them. What that does, and part of this kind of sounds bad, but it cuts down me having to do that for 35 students. I do really, really in-depth feedback with probably, I'm going to say probably doesn't cut down that many students. About 70% of my students take me up on this. Some of them don't need to take me up on it. So, you know, we can brush those off right away. And then some can just take my comments in the rubric and get better that way. And then some really need that in-depth conversation. Armstrong, you said I'm not doing this right. I don't understand. Can you help me fix it? Yes, I can. And the feedback I got from students both last year and this year since I've implemented this is that they learned how to write. They've learned more about how to write because it's not just read the comments, get a grade. Oh, I got a D on my paper. Oh, well, that's what I normally get, and throw it in the trash. And then who cares? So I think so that's worked really well for me. And then Turnitin.com with all these great features that they've added now. Sorry, that is my child. All these great features that they've added has made it really easy to give authentic feedback. There's voice comments. I can leave it rubrics attached, and so we can go through the rubric together. But the comments that you can leave with quick marks, and you can write your own comments. Yes, that's my children screaming. I'm sorry. I'll be done in just a minute. Is that it also tells them how to fix it. It doesn't just say word choice, and that's a problem. Kids don't know what that means, but it says word choice. It gives an explanation of why that's wrong, and then some examples of how to fix it. So there's a lot of really great authentic feedback that they can get from that. And by the way, rubrics, while they're great for teachers, you know, students don't really understand them. So it's really hard. So what I normally do is focus on one or two things in each essay or each piece of writing. And then that way we can just focus on that one piece, right? But I still give them a full rubric score so they know where they fall with everything. And I think that's what I was going to really talk about. The next slide I had was just that, you know, having that conversation with students, whether it's voice comments, text comments, because I type a lot faster than I can write, and my hand would always, I don't have to wear Band-Aids anymore because I type all my comments, but I can type a lot more and give a lot more authentic feedback when I can type all of that in. And again, you can do that on a Google Doc. You don't need turnitin.com to type in comments. You can type, I do it all the time. They'll share their essay with me and I just tell them what they need to do and fix it. And that's awesome. And they can share their essay with me before it's due. I always tell them, I'm like, I'm your teacher. I'm the one grading it. Give it to me early. I'll take a look at it. Why not? And then the final piece that I was going to mention is, I know a lot of schools don't do this, but we do have peer tutoring at our school where students are in my classroom that can kind of help and talk with students. And what Eric was saying earlier about reading the essay out loud and hearing that actual writing really helps. And you don't have to have a peer tutor. They can sit with another student. And what I did is I made every student read through their essay one time as part of their edits before, you know, to another student. And then they could help each other fix it if they could before they turned it in. So that was really helpful. So that's the peer review with focus. Turnitin.com has a great peer review feature too. And you can write your own questions. So if you have certain things you want to focus on, you can do that, which I think is great. And you can anonymously assign to students, and they can do one or two or however many, which is really great. You can do that on paper too. It's, you know, none of this you need another resource like turnitin.com for. But I just think that authentic feedback has really changed the whole environment of writing in my classroom. And students feel a little bit more comfortable, and we just talk about it all the time. Every day, every other day, we're talking about something that has to do with their papers because it's a constant work in progress. It's never a final draft. I think that's what I wanted to talk about. I got a little distracted with my children. I apologize. I gave some examples here in the slides, some Turnitin options, but again, Turnitin is not something you have to use. And the peer review, I gave an example of that. And again, you know, I got this from it was the UCI writing conference, that draft, delete, rearrange, add, form new words, talk it out, and then that revision process. It's just a cycle. You just keep going back and forth. It's always a draft. You're always trying to fix it, and you can always be better. And I always talk about Harper Lee, and it took her 20 years to write that novel. And that lots of authors, you know, it's a work in progress, and they're never fully happy with that final product because it can always be better. And I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. I love your process. And as a former colleague of you, I know that working with your students through that was a very enriching and invaluable experience for them. So, and I love Seesaw. I wish we could spend all day talking about it. And I love that you use that with your students to create those one-on-one conversations when we know it's hard. When we teach secondary and you've got 100 and something kids, you don't have time for one-on-one conversations with them for every paper they write, but you're able to kind of create those experiences using technology. So I like that.
And I should have mentioned, I got a little distracted, so I apologize. But with Seesaw, they can leave a comment back to me. So we can have this conversation that's not face-to-face necessarily, and they can ask a question and I can clarify if we don't have time to do that face-to-face, which is really great. And that is something you can't do with turnitin.com. And Google Docs now has voice comments, but it's only 30 seconds.
Well, sometimes that's all you need. But
sometimes that's all you need. But you can do that real quick, you know.
Yeah, when it comes to leaving voice comments in Google Docs, you can also use that extension that we looked at earlier, Read and Write. The teacher, version that the teachers get it free at no cost. There's a voice note feature in there. Now that records up to a minute at a time, and it just inserts it as a recorded audio as a comment in the margin, and you can do as many as you want in there. And the kids just click on, and it plays back your voice to them. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. I love that. Okay. All right. Barb from the chat says we use buddy classes, which is similar, really helpful to all learners. Yeah, especially for lower grades. If you didn't have a peer tutoring setup, you could definitely use buddy classes for that. Let's see. Jennifer was asking, Amy and I were just talking about buddy classes. Is there an extension to temporarily remove student names from titles for anonymity? I don't think so. I guess there's something that, and how, you could also screencastify your comments back and forth. Samantha, I love Seesaw for sharing the videos because it keeps it all in the journal. And the sharing part of it's taken care of because that's all part of the app. So Jennifer, I don't know of an extension that will delete the titles for anonymity, but we can look into that and see maybe we can find something for that. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing. I'm going to go back and share my screen again. Let's see, there's my button. Okay, so I'm still looking at the chat. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put those in there. If you're just joining us, welcome. We'd like to invite you to check out our resources at edtech.team/student-writing. I've also pasted it in the chat a couple of times. And of course, please fill out the form that's linked in the slide deck, which is also pasted in the chat, for a chance to win a free online course. We only have 3 entries right now, so you have a really good chance of winning that course if you fill out that form. We are at our last our contestant. It's not a contest. We're at our last presenter. Kimberly Eckhart is an English language arts teacher from Louisiana, and we're super excited to hear what she has to share about using English writing tools in her classroom as well. So Kimberly, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. There we go. I can press buttons. I'm good at this. Okay, go ahead, Kimberly.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Are you good? All right, perfect. So I'm going to share my screen in just a little bit. I also want to start by telling you a little bit about my background, because what I'm going to be sharing with you today is how to use student portfolios to improve student writing. So my background, this is my 4th year as an English teacher, and before that it was reading intervention, and before that it was 6 years of special education inclusion, and before that it was social work. Actually, I was alternately certified. And so going into English, it's very important to me to use such a powerful content area to really take a look at the whole child. So while improving the writing, making sure that they're constantly reflecting and growing. And any tool that I can use to do that is really important to me. And I've gotten better at it over the years. And so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen now. I'm going to take you through using digital portfolios in ways that were very different for me, and that really made a lot of headway in ways that all the feedback, it seems, that I've written in the past 10 years didn't really meet just as much as these digital portfolios did. So from here, I'm gonna get started. So I'm just gonna give a little bit of background on the use of portfolios, and I think that pretty much every teacher uses a portfolio in some way, whether you really recognize that you do or not. And I think elementary teachers are just amazing at this. It's so much a part of their classrooms. But essentially, like a collection of student work, that's a student portfolio. And then there's varying ways of how you can use it and to what means that you use it. And so it's all in this continuum of what of it is teacher directed and what of it is student owned. And so a lot of teachers choose to use more of a progress portfolio. And I certainly use this a lot in my class in terms of like tangible work and essays and writing and videos of certain performance-based tasks or seminars. And it's a really good way to measure things over time. Especially in a world where we're sort of inundated with standardized testing. It's a really great way to make these markers along the way. But what I really wanted to get stronger at, and what the past couple of years has helped me do, is take a look at process portfolios, where it really unleashes more of student thinking and helps them to become a lot more metacognitive on their own process and how they develop what they've come to think or know, and on up to performance portfolios, which are more over time, and sometimes that could take years. So kind of giving them something that they can take with them so that everything we do together, all the blood, sweat, and tears, isn't just lost in English 1. So anytime I incorporate any time of ed tech at all, I always try to start with what are my needs for this. And so the biggest needs, in addition to just the really great benefits of a portfolio, are these 3 things. And I think that these 3 things are issues that all English teachers kind of struggle with, no matter what the grade is. If you're teaching writing, I think we all have to take a second look at this constantly. So first, a lack of genuine and flexible commentary. So the ability of someone to just freely form their thoughts and opinions in a way that's really engaging and really helps us see their thought process. I find that with my students, at least, they become really formulaic in the writing. They can cite evidence, and that's getting a lot better, and they can explain it, but kind of the richness of just ideas was really lacking in the writing. And I know that they felt it too. Like the writing wasn't very inspired, and I know that they weren't really motivated to write in those ways, but I had a lot of trouble improving that. Also, a need for me is to improve digital citizenship. Obviously, their world, this generation, they see people just kind of haphazardly throw words around without regard for like the power of words, and they don't have another person on the other side to really see the feelings reflected back. And so I really wanted to think of some way to incorporate portfolios and authentic writing in class, where they would be forced to be more empathetic with the weight of their words. And then third, I have 125, 130 students from year to year. It's very difficult to find time to promote and guide student reflection on an ongoing basis. So those were the 3 things I was looking for in terms of a digital portfolio. And so where portfolios, all of them, they do help students take ownership. They do improve communication. They really help us to figure out like what exactly is going on with students, and they help us monitor. But I knew that I needed to incorporate something digital, because so much of where the students already write is in the digital realm. And it also helps me hit on skills that it's quite possible they'll never take another course that helps them do, like basic coding, web design. Again, like I said, the idea of making very intentional practice with digital citizenship without it having to be standalone lessons. And then also something that's easily shareable, and that gives them a really quick boost of confidence, because this generation is used to connecting publicly. And for some of them, they connect globally. So they're already very used to that. And I wanted to harness that for my own needs in the classroom. So I chose to use Google Sites for student portfolios, and I'm going to show you some examples in just a second. But I went with Google Sites. Over the years, I've used so many different ways and so many different means of sharing student work. But for my particular students, it was really nice to use Google because of the brand recognition. It was really appealing. It was very authentic. They're all very used to websites. And I think probably the best part, we have Chromebooks in our classroom. The students are all very used to Google Suite. And so using Google Sites and the ease of using Google functionality with embedding documents or uploading, it was all there. And so I teach the 2 honors classes of my grade, but I also have the privilege of teaching the 2 inclusion classes. And so Google Sites was awesome enough where if students were comfortable and confident, they could really flourish with Google Sites. But it was also accessible for students who may have had a much harder time. And so every single child, even the ones that came in later in the year, everyone built their own Google site. And I think that that just kind of speaks to the ease of setting up a site through Google. So I'll give you a little bit of an example, and I'm going to click. So I already have a class website, and so that stood alone without the student pages. But I am going to switch over to what that looks like so you can see what I mean. I know that in an English classroom and many other classrooms, journaling is pretty important. So it started out where all 4 of my classes, they have journals. And so the journals, just like any journal, it ranges in topics from current events, which is very important to me and to my class, to any type of resource I think is interesting. But I listen a lot to the students themselves and what's on their minds. And I think that that's been really important, particularly in a town right outside of Baton Rouge, because over the past couple of years, the students have had a lot of things happen in their world that they have a lot of trouble navigating at 14 and 15 years old. They have trouble, navigating just like adults do with a lot of things that are happening in our world. But over the past couple of years, it's been really helpful and really just beautiful to watch their writing flourish in the aftermath of like Alton Sterling and the violence against police officers shortly after that. And then this year with Kaepernick and the kneeling for the anthem and lots of social justice issues that arise from To Kill a Mockingbird and teen suicide and the string of the school shootings that I don't even know how I would have broached if I didn't have this way already embedded in class for students to process that. So I'm going to show you a little bit. This is one of the class sites, and this has made communication with parents so easy because even though students have rubrics and they write for different reasons, for different assignments, it's so easy to have all parents connected to my class site and to go and take a look at all the other students. And if a student's work made it to the exemplary area, it's so easy for a parent to help their child. And they're like, oh, now I see, Bailey this week did this, what made this difficult for you? And I've had a lot of feedback from parents that it's helped them have conversations with their children in ways that they hadn't really had in the past few years. So we're going to take a look at Aaliyah's page. And I think for here, just for brevity, I'm going to go back to the shared documents because they're all linked. But so you'll see, like, in the terms of just kind of making it their own, this was great. And I got to tell you, like, to set up the initial lesson for how to use Google Sites took 25 minutes, and that was in every class. And then from there, the students are so good at kind of helping, they just went to town. So you may have some that are like Aaliyah's, where it's like all these pictures and like all of her friends and her family, and it's great. But you also have some that may have, only like graphic novels or not that much at all. And that's really great because it helps them express themselves in ways that are really cool. So aside from that, which you'll see, so each class has its own site. Sorry about that. And then one of the ways I use it, like I said, is journals. And so that's such an easy way that students were able to reflect on their writing, and more than that, to process, because writing is cathartic, and I want them to know that. Like, it's good in a million ways. And I think most of all, it helped them navigate these really touchy areas, and they started to realize, in ways I'm going to show you in just a second, of how I actually use the writing in class to express themselves in ways that are respectful. And that was something that I had trouble with, respectful dissent or sometimes respectful agreements. But in any case, over the year, they're easily able to go back and see, oh my gosh, wow, look at what I was doing here, and now it's not that. And that's kind of the easy way to look at portfolios, because they do that. I was also able to use they're very same sites for any projects that were web-based. So of course, we do have projects that are not web-based, but the ones that are, they're also showcased here. And these are things that the students are going to take through the next few years, which I think is amazing for them to get used to kind of building a cadre of work in that sense. My class also does a lot with Genius Hour, and so their Genius Hour reflections are also posted. So you can use these sites in so many different ways. But now I'm going to shift over to how I use them in class, because technology, I have such a respect for it, and I use it so much in my class, but to me, it enhances so much more, and we can't lose sight of soft skills and just people skills that I think are sometimes threatened in the space that we have right now. So I'm going to tell you some ways that you could use portfolios, because a lot of times we collect all this work and it's like, then what? What do we do with it? Or how can we be a little bit more innovative besides, here's your work at the end of the year, go look through your folder that they'll toss in the trash can. So I'm going to share with you 4 different ways that these were used in an ongoing way in my class, because it's that more than anything. I've always had them keep journals, but putting in these 4 practices with their digital portfolio, I think, is what made the difference. So first, and I took a picture of this kind of happening. One way we use it is they do kind of group coaching and jurying. And I put this quote in there because it had me doubled over in laughter. That little boy, he just said to the girl, "Hold up, you can't just make up your own fact." Like, he gave her so much attitude. It was hilarious. And no amount of feedback I had been able to write in tactful ways helped her realize what I was saying. Like, where did you get that? And that's cool, but I think your brain made that up from nothing. But this kid telling her, this kid that she trusted, was able to kind of put her on the spot. And then he showed her where she could have gone for more valid evidence or to better source the site she was using. And so that came from another student in the class. And I think that was amazing. So another use is sort of peer review. So what you'll see here is pretty common. The students, they have to go and read their classmates and all the other classes that I have as well. And they could kind of pick on a rotating basis. But if they have questions about what someone wrote, or they want more detail, or they want more sourcing from it, and sometimes they wrote, but they get a chance to kind of identify a student that they want to have explain their work, which I think is pretty amazing, because I don't think I had a chance to do that till probably grad school, where I got to present my work and defend it, but also promote it and then give feedback. And this was something that the students really looked forward to throughout all of my classes. Here, these were pretty powerful moments also. Students selected pairs where they could choose who read and coach their work. So here, you could see like they're listening to their feedback. He's listening to this feedback. And they were very good about choosing partners through the year, because certain work, certain journals, they wanted certain students to look it over. And I thought that that really added to the atmosphere of the class and the trust, and knowing which student to go to for the best input on certain topics. I thought that was really important for them. And then the last part that I thought was really great and really helped me as a teacher is it broadened kind of the meaning of my feedback. I leave a lot of voice feedback. It is very hard to get it in the 30 seconds, as we established. I got a lot more concise. But it's awesome because other students get to hear and see the characteristics of exemplary work, because I tie it all into Google Classroom. So if someone's journal just knocked me out of the park, or if there was a project that was so good, but only one class gets to see it, instead I get to share it across, and then they get to listen to it back. And I thought what I saw, like, that was pretty cool by the end of the year, is them figuring out, like, whenever I would post the weekly feedback, going to a student who maybe got it and asking them, hey, could you look at mine and help mine? Because I see Ms. Eckhart said you did this really well, if you could help me. And I thought that that was really such a powerful thing. Whenever the feedback that you leave, it's being used and it gets away from you and takes on a life of its own. Whenever I say that I tied it back to Google Classroom, sometimes the feedback that I would leave after a weekly journal, it might be just praises, like for anything at all. So it might be general, or it might be very specific, or it might be something that has to do with tabs. It's anything very, very general. But it also gave me an opportunity to sometimes like clear up misconceptions, especially if like pretty much everyone in the class looked at the resource or looked at the news and didn't really take in a whole picture. So through Google Classroom, a lot of times I got to revise whatever it is using additional resources. And that's something, because I teach a lot through questioning, but sometimes you have to draw a hard line in what's kind of real and what's not. And so this gave me a really great and positive way to do that. with the students in a way that I don't think was very threatening for them. And then they could take it and reformulate whatever it is that they were thinking. And at that point, they could still continue with whatever they thought. And that's fine, because I really encourage them to just follow the other protocols of class and express themselves in respectful ways. But it's there. And they at all times would be tying in any additional resources, even if it was to dispute them. So in case you're not feeling like Google Sites are the place to start, although, like I said, the functionality is just so very easy, especially if you're using other Google products. You could also check out these, and I've used all of these for different reasons with different classes over the past few years. But WordPress and sort of like its sister offshoot, Edge blogs, that is more, it's strictly like if you really want to take a look at blogging and journaling and improve it that way. It doesn't have like the huge sort of appeal I found with my particular students. It's not something that they necessarily relate to. And whenever I used edgy blogs, my high school students were like, oh, this is for kids, which is cool, but they are kids. And so certainly you could use that, and it puts it in a little more tightly controlled space. Evernote and VoiceThread are also pretty cool, because you can tie in more like audible things or more visual content, which you also can through Google Sites. But this, again, kind of streamlines it if that's what you want to work in with everything else. Google Drive is amazing for portfolios, digital or otherwise. It's a little bit trickier to kind of share it, and it doesn't really have like the mass buy-in that a Google site did with my students, but we certainly use Google Drive for portfolios that I have other uses for my classroom, and you could definitely use it the same way, especially if you're looking to just sort of chronicle growth throughout the year. And then can't turn my back on Weebly. It's in some ways it's a little easier, but they've actually beefed it up so much that I don't know at this point which one would be easier for a student, Weebly or Google Sites, because again, they're so used to using Google. But this is, it's very basic, very streamlined, and very, very easy. I used Weebly for personal websites in the past, and they're great. All these tools are just amazing. So from there, I am gonna turn it back over. And then if you guys have any questions at all, I'd be more than happy to share. And thank you so much for listening to that.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you, Kimberly. Let's see. We can let me get the chat here.
Oh.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, let's see. So lots of praise for Google Sites. It's just so easy to use. Let's see if I missed any questions. Barb, I agree with you. Google Sites is definitely utilized. Barb asked, do you use live binders? Barb, I don't understand what you mean. Is that Kimberly, do you know what she's talking about? You might have to unmute yourself, because I think I muted you.
So reading lips, not cool. No, little skill we can work on. I've used live binders in the past. In fact, it was really, really helpful whenever I was teaching special education, because it's so super easy, and it's such an easy way to track. It's like a place that can house all these different assignments. And like I said, I use portfolios for different purposes and different reasons. And every class is different and every year is different. There may be a year where I have students who, if Google Sites just isn't getting it done the way I need, I could always use live binders. But what I really wanted in addition wasn't just the portfolio for this. And so the idea of the digital citizenship and working on these other things for this year and last year, those were things that really factored into my decision to move that. So it wasn't just working on the portfolio itself. It was also kind of the sharing of content and making it a little more viewable to any parent, any student, and then anyone from different schools that maybe wanted to weigh in with my students as well.
Right. So we had, Jacqueline had a really great comment, and I totally agree with her. She said that feedback, whether from teacher or student, is only valuable when the author reflects on it and makes purposeful choices to respond to it. And I think what you've been able to create with these Google Sites enables that as a thing. And then we had a question from Samantha Curtis. How do you add the feedback feature to Google Sites?
Oh, well, so I don't know that there's a way to add feedback to Google Sites, but I do the add-ons for feedback in different ways. So Google Classroom, obviously, like I'll pop, like every prompt is housed under journals. It's all categorized that way. And so after every week or every task, that's where the students can get their feedback. And that is private unless they want to share it with someone. But then Google Docs, whether it's the notes feature or the Kaizena add-on, those are awesome. And so I use that a lot, especially some of the journal were pretty intense and they had to be drafted first, or the kids wanted them drafted first. And so I would use it there. And then of course, the course of the more traditional writing in my class with essays, we definitely use the feedback that way. And so you could either use, I think it was Google Notes, but I'm a Kaizena fan. I like the idea that you kind of clip the same feedback over and over, and you just have to like paste it in the document. So either of those work really, really well. But the feedback for Google Sites, I made that all in person. And I think it made all the difference in the world, in person from me and in person from the students, because I wanted that element of actual human interaction so they could, you know, see what does it look like when you say those words and the other person can see you and hear you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that feedback is super valuable, especially when they have worked so hard to put effort into a piece of work and then to actually hear feedback from their teachers. English teaching is not my professional background, but I still remember my senior English teacher and the time she took to conference with us and work on those essays, and it was valuable. And you're right, writing is incredibly cathartic, and I'm so glad that we have all these tools to help connect students to that process. So, okay, let me share my screen again. Let's see. So on slide 32, that's not on Google Sites. Let me go and see here. No, that is actually Google Classroom, Samantha. So what she's showing you there is a screenshot of the comments that you can make. So she made a post in Google Classroom, and then her students or she is replying back to that. Hopefully that helps clarify your question. Okay, so we're gonna, and Kimberly, the add-on that you mentioned, I don't think we have a link for that. If you could throw that in the resource deck, that would be great. The one with the funny name, I don't even remember.
The Kaizena, yeah, that's another add-on for Google Docs. Used to leave feedback, and yeah, there's so many great things. You've got the built-in, you know, text commenting, you know, feature in Docs where you can insert a text comment. But then you've got things like Kaizena or Read and Write for Google, which will both allow you to record your voice and add voice comments. And then, as we saw in some of the chat there, another thing we include or encourage would be like a screencasting tool like Screencastify, and you can just record the screen of the student's document up on there while you're talking to them and scrolling down and clicking on things, and Screencastify will save that video right to your drive, give you a link. You throw that link right in a comment in the document. When they open it back up, they click the link and they can watch the video as you go down through their document. And as a final fun little twist on feedback, if you are using Google Classroom, because we heard a little bit about Classroom there, don't forget the mobile version of Classroom has some extra features that you don't get in the web version. So if you've got you know, either an iPhone or an Android phone, an iPad, an Android tablet, or a more modern Chromebook that supports Android apps, one of the features in there is digital handwriting. You can actually write right on top of a Google document in the mobile version of Classroom, and then it annotates up that document right in there. So it's another interesting way to provide some feedback if you want something other than, you know, text feedback, voice feedback, video feedback, and digital handwriting feedback. And I've got explanations of each one of those on the link I had originally shared further down in there as far as feedback on my my Google Tools post.
Yeah, I'll definitely repost that. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, the mobile version of, I know sometimes it's hard to let our students use phones in the classroom. That can be a four-letter word for a lot of teachers, but there's a lot out there when you let them use the computer in their pocket. So I love that those are all great tools. So let me screen share again for so we can wrap up here. So any last minute questions, if you could pop those in the chat. We've had a pretty active chat today. That makes it super fun. Make sure, again, please complete the form if you want to enter to win a chance to win our free online course by EdTechTeam. And then the link for our resources today is edtech.team/studentwriting. It is linked several times in the YouTube chat as well. So I am sharing my screen right now. I am. Okay, good. Just checking. I had a moment where I was nervous. Okay. So again, one more time, complete that form. Our EdTechTeam online university is a great way to do flexible work at your own pace. You can even earn graduate credit, graduate hours, lots of different things on there. And these are all, at what they call just-in-time courses. So whenever you're ready is when you work on it. If you want to learn more or stay connected with us, you can find us on Twitter at EdTechTeam. You can also find us on Google Plus at +EdTechTeam, community.edtechteam.com. And of course, our website is edtechteam.com. For our follow-up here, on this slide, we'll have a link to everything. As soon as we're done, I'll pop in the link for the archived webinar, so you can come back and watch this or reference it at any time. I'll also have a link to the archived chat. If you'd like to request EdTechTeam to come to your school and work on any one of these things, writing or something else, you're more than welcome to request a workshop with us. And if you want to get a PD certificate for the time that you spent with us today, you can fill out that form and earn an hour of PD time. So next month we have, this is going to be our July webinar. We're still finalizing the details for the date and the topic. It'll be the summer months. So you can register for that at the site listed here, goo.gl. It is case sensitive, and it's when you register, we'll update you with the link and the date and all of that on there. So, all right, so let's look and see who's going to win our free online course. I'm going to refresh this one more time and make sure I've got everybody. There we go. Highlight everybody's name. We're going to use our fancy name picker. All right, here we go. And our free online course goes to Tara Brown. Tara Brown. All right, Tara, I will be contacting you via email to get you all set up there. Tara Brown. So I'll be emailing you shortly to get that all arranged for you. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today on our webinar for improving student writing. I want to thank my panelists for coming, Elizabeth and Eric and Kim. You guys have been so great. Thank you so much. Y'all were awesome. Ooh, yeah. Well, I won't be at ISTE, but EdTechTeam will be at ISTE. So make sure you stop by the EdTechTeam booth if you're at ISTE in a couple weeks. Eric, will you be at ISTE? Yeah, Eric will be at ISTE. Elizabeth, you and I. No, we're gonna.
Yeah, I'll be there. Have a couple sessions each day, but I'll also be at the EdTech booth on Monday. I'll be doing a session at the EdTechTeam booth and hanging out there Monday afternoon.
Oh, thanks. Kimberly, any chance you're going to ISTE? I don't know. Kim, can you hear me? Are you going to ISTE this year?
I'm going to space camp.
Oh, space camp. I
know.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
Yeah. Okay. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much again for everything, for joining us. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.